allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, it's so nice to be here again. It's been a while, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about something I think concerns everybody in this room, and that's what we eat. I was going to title this talk, Let's Make America Thin Again, but somehow it didn't have quite the right ring to it.
I'm glad you started after the baked Alaska was served.
But you know, on a serious note, we've all heard that obesity rates are rising, not only for children, but also for adults. The graph keeps going up. Occasionally we hear that it's leveled out a little bit, but then the next time we hear it's going up some more. So this is a phenomenon that's quite new in the history of medical care over the past century. And along with rising obesity rates, it's the adult obesity rates on the left-hand chart, you see a similar chart on the right, and that's adults diagnosed with diabetes. Anyone want to care to guess how many people in this country now either have diabetes diagnosed or pre-diabetes diagnosed? Anybody want to guess on the combined percentage right now?
37.
25. 35%. 50.
Who said 50?
Whoa.
Okay, you're 52%. Okay, altogether. We just this past year went over the 50% mark. That's 14% people with diagnosed diabetes. These are like blood tests. Okay, this is somebody's guess. Okay, this is measured, and together with pre-diabetes, and pre-diabetes is diabetes not yet there, but you're on the way. Okay, it has to do with your blood sugar levels as measured. So we have a major crisis on our hands, folks, not just in this country, but around the world. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you what we can do to fix this, okay? The problem with increasing weight and diabetes is all the other metabolic disorders that go along with them. And you can see stroke, heart attack, cardiovascular, hypertension, arthritis, dyslipidemia, or high cholesterol. Those are all projected to continue to rise for the next 10 years or more. So this is not a good story, okay? We got problems. So you might want to know, when did all this start? Anybody want to take a guess?
1955.
Not that early. If you go back 1955, how many people have watched old black and white TV shows on television? Probably all of them. And look at the people in them. They're thin as a rail. Okay? So something happened starting right here about 1980. Okay? What did the government do in 1980?
Told us to stop eating fat, right?
That's it. Okay. It said cut the fat, okay, and you're on your own, okay, as to what you're going to eat. And that recommendation parallels the rise of obesity, diabetes, etc. That recommendation was followed. Okay, some people say, well, nobody pays attention to that. Well, a lot of people do. Fats went down, carbohydrates rose. A lot, because a quarter of the meals in this country are not something you and I choose. They're an institution, a school, a hospital, etc., that chooses those foods. And they do that choice based on the USDA dietary guidelines, okay? So in many cases, we don't really have a choice in terms of what we're eating. It's put in front of us, okay? But we have seen this process go on for the last 40 years. Anybody remember this Time magazine cover? You know, the sad face, dietary fat is to be kept as low as possible because cholesterol leads to heart disease. Weight loss can only result from reducing calories, okay? And all about balance and calories in, calories out. Or exercise. Who tells you to exercise to maintain your weight? As a major international company that advises you, I just saw it on the machine in Walgreens the other day about balance. What company sells a product that you drink? Pardon me? Gatorade, but the biggest company in the world, Coca-Cola. It's all about balance, okay? Balance your lifestyle, meaning, you know, run the 8 or 10 miles you need to run in order to drink one of the small half cans, okay? That's how you balance things. A lot of people do that. So the only way to lose weight or maintain your weight is to go on a low-fat, low-calorie diet, right? We've all heard that. I used to teach that. Unfortunately, our bodies fight back, okay? And the major mechanism that forces us to eat more food is called hunger, okay? We could get into ghrelin and all the hormones that regulate that, but essentially, our bodies tell us that we have to have more calories, and we'll do anything to get them. So if the calories we're getting is food that has had its fat taken out, then the only other source of nutrient, I mean, you could put more protein in, it won't do you any good, is carbohydrates. And carbohydrates, that's sugars, starches, okay, especially refined grains, flour, things of that sort, and all those products in the center of the grocery store that are made with that. And we're supposed to count our calories, okay? How many people know exactly how many calories you've had today? Anybody keeping track? Okay, you got it? Okay. Not easy to do, is it? It's easier when you have it on a calculator, right? But the problem is that your calorie balance is not necessarily going to predict your hunger, because your hunger is controlled by another mechanism. We are not a thermodynamic machine like many people tell us that we are. We're a hormonal machine, and we have many regulatory processes in our body that balance our food intake. So the recommendation by the USDA, plain and simple, avoid fat, get plenty of exercise, and eat your veggies. I agree with eat your veggies, nothing wrong with that. But it's a set of recommendations that really did not follow the science. And it's the science that has changed in those past 40 years. In particular, the last 15 years, a whole lot of studies have been done. How many people heard that the USDA now recommend that cholesterol is no longer a problem, no longer a nutrient of concern, okay? Never was. And we've had that research for over 30 years, but finally it's now into the regulations. But of course, we hear a lot about fat. Cut the fat, cut the fat. But when you eat fat, you feel full longer. Anybody ever notice that? Okay. Fat takes about 8 hours to digest, carbs about 2 to 3. So if you have fats in your meal, you're not going to get hungry as soon. And as I said, hunger is the problem. So when you cut carbohydrates out of your diet, your body goes to look for a source of fat. And where does it find it? In your body. Okay? And people, I talked with Harvey earlier. You could talk to him anytime about what happens when you cut carbs out of your diet. It forces your body to burn its own fat. And that's exactly what happens with Harvey started on the Atkins diet years ago and has stayed with it. Okay? And there are many recommendations for low carbohydrate, high fat diets. The two go together. You can't take the carbs out without replacing it with something. And what you need to replace it with is fat. What we have to get over is our fear of fat, okay? And that's what this is all about. I've been on this diet for 7, 8 years now. I was pre-diabetic, 6.3 A1C. I went to my doc last week, 5.1, okay? Well, it's plain and simple because my body is simply responding to the insulin that's demanded when I eat carbohydrates. So by reducing my carbohydrates, my insulin level goes down and thereby my blood sugar. And that's what this is all about, keeping glucose levels low, okay? Because every time you have starch or sugars, you're telling your body to produce insulin, and that's where we end up with insulin resistance, which happens long before you're diagnosed as diabetic. Okay, it goes on for years, but it ends up creating all kinds of problems. So to improve weight gain, reduce your carbohydrate intake, especially sugars and flours, increase exercise, that's important, and increase healthy fat intake. And there were choices on the lunch table today to do that. I had no problem eating here. Okay, it was very nice. But Harvey said just avoid the first half of the table and then you're fine. When carbs levels are high, cells no longer accept glucose and blood sugars rise. That's when we get into difficulty with diabetes and related syndromes. This is part of metabolic syndrome, which includes high cholesterol and high blood pressure. The three go together. If you heard me on the radio with Rose Caputo from St. Anne's Hospital, she was talking about the three sisters there. So the dietary policy led us to diabetes. As the cartoon says, the high-carb diet I put you on 20 years ago gave you diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Oops. So what do we need to do? We need to get our recommendations to catch up with current science, so there's a national effort to do that. They're about to review the dietary guidelines by the Institute of Medicine. We need to stop demonizing natural fats, not trans fat, which is an artificial fat, and recommending eating foods that contain fat. For children, we need to bring back whole milk, and we have a whole campaign working with parents and schools to get them to go back to buying whole milk. The obesity rates of children who drink whole milk go down. Wow. Okay? And we started that policy without any research. Just said, no, since adults shouldn't get fat, kids shouldn't get fat, and we'll just do low-fat milk in schools, and because it tastes terrible, we'll put some 6 grams of sugar in it with some chocolate and make them drink it. You know, that's the worst thing we ever did. So for the 52% of us who are carb sensitive, okay, we need to lower carb foods that stimulate insulin. If you think I'm full of baloney and I'm just a guy who reads the wrong stuff, then you need to listen to Darius Mosafarian, who's the dean of the Tufts School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy in Boston. Okay, this is number one guy on nutrition in America. Okay, he is completely on top of this. I sent him my slides. I said, Dave, you got it just right. This is what we need to be telling people. And then his buddy Dave Ludwig, who ran the obesity and weight loss clinic at Mass General for 13 years, just published a book. Anybody seen this book? Let me get my slides. Always Hungry. There's a copy over there. If you haven't read anything, read it. It's an easy read. He has lots of recipes, but his whole point of view is that we need to do low carb, reduce the carbs, and increase the fats. And so, if you're wondering what country is doing this and doing a good job, guess what? Sweden. 23% of people in Sweden are following low carb diets. Okay? There's a huge effort there. They changed their dietary guidelines. Okay? Look at what's beginning to happen to obesity rates. No other country in the world. Okay? I'm going to finish now, but I want you to think about inviting me to a group of people that you work with or know, or church or other group, and I'll come and talk for more than 15 minutes. I can make it half an hour, whatever, and I'll tell you the whole story and all the things that I'm not able to cover in this short period of time. But there's a whole science to this, and if you don't want me in person, the reason I videotape everything is because you'll find it on gfrpartners.com, lowcarbs.html, and there are about 15 videos of, I do a whole 10-week course during the fitness challenge. That's all on there. I work with Amanda Raposo, who's a registered dietitian from South Coast Hospitals, who follows this with her patients and gets superb results. She and I presented to the Mass Dietary Association. Half of the people in the room loved what we're saying, the other half wanted to kick us out because there's a war going on over these recommendations. And if you're in the field, you know what I'm talking about. But please, give me a call. My card's over there on the table. Email me sometime, and I'll be happy to arrange a time to talk. So that's all I have to say for now, but I'd be happy to take some questions if we have time.
I made a couple of observations. I've been to Ireland twice in the last, I would say 16 years. And spent a week, 10 days and then a week in Ireland. And what I noticed first time I went in 1999 was, you know, everywhere you go in the United States, it's like every other person is overweight. Ireland, maybe 1 out of 100.
Right.
But the other thing I noticed was the alcoholism rate is so high, there's so many alcoholics, and the diabetes is so high in Ireland, and I don't know if that's related to the alcohol because you don't see any obese people.
Well, we always pair obesity and diabetes together, but it's not necessarily the case. And now there's a great deal of concern around the world, especially among Asian populations. It's called TOFI, thin on the outside, fat on the inside, and it has to do with abdominal fat. There are people who are quite heavy, but who are not carb sensitive and do not develop diabetes, okay? So it's not a one-to-one, if you're heavy, you're going to get diabetes. It has to do with how your body responds to carbohydrates and how insulin resistant you are. So you may have people in a population who look like their normal weight, but are carrying a lot of diabetes. And that's particularly true in India, Asia, and other places. Yep.
I saw something on the slide about like trans fat. So when you talk about, you know, not being afraid of fat, it's certain types of fat that we should be focusing or not focusing on, correct?
Well, I've got a whole couple of hours on that. I know, you know, if you don't want to get into that, just do the Mediterranean diet, lots of olive oil, etc. And then you'll think that you're not getting any saturated fat until you read the bottom line label on the bottle and find out that olive oil is 14% saturated fat.
You want saturated though, right?
You do.
Yeah.
And that's my point.
Okay.
That fats never come either as monosaturated, polyunsaturated, or saturated fat. They're always a mixture. Okay. And all of those fats, trans fat is, remember Crisco? That's an artificially made, it's hydrogenated oil. It's some of the worst stuff known to man. They did an experiment on that, having people try to lower heart disease by eating trans fat. The results were so bad, people were getting heart attacks and dying. They had to stop the experiment. It was that bad, okay? So stay away from hydrogenated oils for sure. But in terms of fats, I start every morning with eggs and sausage and cooked in coconut oil, okay? You're smiling. Did you have a question before?
I just, the TOFI reminds me of Dr. Oz's book about omentum fat, which I think the omentum fat is
right.
what
it's
you're
the fat
speaking of,
around
right?
your organs, right? Yeah, and that's where the danger is. Renee?
How do you feel about a paleo lifestyle or a paleo diet?
This fits right into
Pretty much
this.
the same.
Right, yeah. A lot of people do both. Paleo is just trying to eat the way we did before civilization 40,000 years ago. Of course, nobody knows exactly what people are eating then, but it emphasizes plenty of activity, and you know, the bottom line is just don't eat processed foods. You know, eat what we say is eat whole foods, the way foods come. Whole milk, okay, whole dairy, whole yogurt, you know. Every time they take fat out of something, you're processing that to death, and you have to replace it. You will not eat yogurt that has had its fat taken out. If you try that, okay, it's awful stuff. So you put sugar in it, okay? That's even worse, okay, in terms of your body. So back to whole foods, eat the way, you know, Marcia and I talk about, you know, eat the way we did when we were thin in the 1950s, you know. It was good, wholesome food, yep.
So it's the bottom line that we should forget about all this low fat and,
Yes.
and this
If it says low fat or healthy, don't buy it.
Forget all the low fat stuff.
Right, yeah. Just go back to whole foods. Yep.
I ate the whole dessert. Is that a good thing?
Oh,